All right, we are back with another Monday preview. We've got Neil from Devil's State of Mind talking about all of the New Jersey Devils tea that has happened since the last time we talked. Guys, I'm so excited because there's been so many things circling around, and as a Western Conference fan, I'm so confused. Neil, what's going on with the Devils?
Oh, where do I start? I think that I make this joke all the time that the Devils are cursed until Ilya Kovalchuk's contract officially comes off the books,
Mm.
which fortunately it does after this season. And the fact that he's also retiring from pro hockey this year is a win. So I think that after this year, I think we'll be in good shape. But in all seriousness, I mean, look, losing Jack Hughes, losing Dougie Hamilton, losing Jonas Siegenthaler. I mean, it's unfortunate. But before any of that, the reality is that this team is not constructed well. If I'm being honest, they need about 4 or 5 new players next season because the entire bottom six, other than really Paul Cotter, is a shambling disaster. They're just not productive. They're slow, way too physical. I mean, I've said it before that our general manager overcompensated in the offseason and made the team a lot slower and took away a lot of the goal scoring, which was very unfortunate. And the Devils also lack another top six winger. You can't have Andre Palat at 6 million per year the way he is at his career,
Mhm.
um, doing that. So yeah, just a lot of inconsistencies. I think inconsistent is the word that will probably end up defining this team this year because right now this is what the Devils are. What you see of late is basically what they are, and that is that if their top guys are scoring, they're fine. They're gonna win some games, and especially if the goaltending, other than of late with Jacob Markstrom, continues to play to a solid level, they're gonna win games. I still fully believe that they're a playoff team. How far they get in the playoffs, I mean, anybody's guess is as good as mine. I mean, honestly, it's
Well, you
just
guys are number three right now, right?
currently at the time of this recording, 6 point lead over the Rangers
Okay.
and a 7 point lead over the Islanders for third in the Metro. So still some cushion, but it has decreased a little bit. Hopefully we can turn it around starting uh, tomorrow against the Canucks, which should be a really interesting game. And then we have you guys later in the week, so that
Woohoo!
should
Don't
be
worry, we'll help pad stats. Um,
well, that would be the game that I could see the Devils being like, well, Markstrom's been struggling of late. Maybe this will be the game he gets right. And then it's not. And then he gives up like 5 goals, and we make the Blackhawks look like world beaters for 60 minutes.
Hey, I haven't seen that in a hot minute. I would be very grateful. I also feel like with your guys' division, like yes, it depends on like how you guys perform, but also how Carolina performs as well,
Mhm.
because they've been a little shaky as of late.
As of late, for sure. They've slowly built a pretty solid cushion in second place. So again, I've said this. The reality is that the Devils and Hurricanes have been on a collision course to face in the first round for the better part of the past like 4 months. Like nothing has changed. It's either the only difference is they're now in second and we're in third. And that's pretty much it. So it's going to be home ice that's going to be the difference. But yeah, no, I mean, is it possible that the Devils could go on a run at this point and catch them? Sure, but I doubt it. I
Mhm.
think it's more likely we'll end up starting the first round against Carolina at Carolina, which we know has been a tough place to play, especially for us. You go back 2 years ago in the second round against them, we struggled. We lost all 3 games in Carolina. It was a struggle. And that's a good team over there, regardless of what has happened. And obviously, with the whole Miko Rantanen situation and everything, that's still a really good coach team over there.
Yeah.
And that's still a really good team, regardless. And they're at way more full strength than we are. So we will certainly be going into that underdogs. But this whole division is tough. I called the Metropolitan Division the division of death because it just really, at times, it's just such a hard division to win in. and you look at the way the Capitals have been unfairly playing. I mean, it's insane how good they are. Um, but the fortunate thing for the Devils is that while they have struggled of late, the teams behind them are falling over themselves. The Rangers are inconsistent. The Islanders only just now have kind of gotten back into it. For the longest time, they were part of it. Look at the Blue Jackets. Just last week, they were right there, and now they've slowly fallen off the table.
Right.
So it's a really tough division. And the thing about it is that a lot can change. There's still 10, 11 games for the majority of the teams. A lot can change between now and even next week. So, this is going to be a tough. This is an important week for the Devils in terms of who they're playing and needing results, needing good results. And like I said, it starts on Monday against Vancouver.
I don't know. It just clicked in my brain that Jack is hurt. I don't get a Hughes Bowl. That's such
Well,
garbage.
no, you still kind of do because Quinn and Luke are playing, so you
Yeah.
still kind of get it. That's no different than when Jack played Quinn at one point and it was just them two. So I still tell people it is. It's just not a full.
It's
It's
not
not a
all
full
three,
one. Yeah.
which for a hot minute, there wasn't any three.
Right.
I'm still fully convinced that, Vancouver is going to tank so bad that you guys are going to come and take Quinn and bring him over to Jersey.
Well, he'll be a free agent in 2 years, so I think a lot. I know that there are Devils fans that are counting down the days till that becomes a reality, which I think it's going to end up happening at some point. I just don't know when. It might be in 2 years. It might be later in their careers. I don't know, but
At some point, you're getting
they
all
all
three
want to
on
play
the team.
together. I'm sure. I'm positive they all want to play. And if the Devils, when they lock up Luke Hughes in the offseason because he's an RFA, I mean the stage is set. Jack's here long term. Luke's here long term. Now we just got to wait for Quinn, and we'll be good. So we'll see.
Perfect.
We'll see.
What are you expecting them to pay Luke in the offseason?
That's a good question. I think it's kind of up and down because some people might say he'll get an 8x8. He'll get a long-term deal like Jack did, which I
Mhm.
think is fair. I also could see him getting a bridge deal, something like four by, I don't know, 4x4.5 or 4x4. I would rather them sign him to an 8x8 for two reasons. One, you get that stability. He's going to be there. Number two, you would once again lock down an uber talented player to a below market contract. I think it's fair to say when you look at some of the Devils' contracts, some of these guys are playing well above the money that they're making. Like Jesper Bratt, who just broke the Devils' all-time single season record for assists with 61 now, he's getting paid less than 8 and he's doing this type of work. Jack's getting paid $8 million a year. Nico Heischer's getting paid $8 million a year. Like the Devils are in a really good position financially where they can sign these guys, convince them to sign for lesserish money because I still think $8 million you'll live the rest of your life in comfortability.
Yeah, you're
Um,
good.
this is how I always argue it. Um, and the Devils still have the cap flexibility to go out and do the necessary things to build the team. And with the salary cap going up, and this is just a positive for every team in the league,
Mhm.
it just opens up more possibilities for teams to get good players fairly quickly and become a good team at a faster rate than maybe we've gotten used to over the last 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
So I would say I would lean towards just locking him down like long term and just being like, now we don't have like one less thing we have to worry about. And I think that that's what you'll see the Devils do first and foremost, because I think they want to establish like, okay, we got him good. Now, how much money do we have left to go out and try to somewhat, I would say, retool this Devils team going into next season?
Definitely. Are there, you said there's like 4 to 5 positions or spots that you guys are kind of missing. And I
Yeah.
was really surprised how quiet you guys were during trade deadline. I was
Mhm.
expecting a bit more or
With
just
all the rumors that everybody kept throwing
exactly
out.
with all,
Yeah.
I feel like the Devils were always in like every sort of rumor mill. Is there anybody or any type of player that you kind of like have your eye on and like realistically we could get him or like a pipe dream that would be cool?
Well, I do have a pipe dream that may become more realistic. depending on what happens in the offseason. But the first answer I'll give you is that, again, I think the Devils are going to have to rebuild their entire bottom six. So you're looking for a third line center and a third line right winger, and then a completely bottom, fourth line. The good news with that is that, a lot of those guys come not too pricey. It all depends on fit. So I really couldn't tell you right now, like, who I'm keeping my eye on. I would say maybe like a Jacob Verana, who I've been adamant about every time he got put on waivers when nobody wanted him, because I was like, I don't see why he couldn't fit in the style that the Devils play.
Mhm.
I had even argued, and we had talked about it on social, Ryan Donato as an option, but apparently the Blackhawks overpriced, apparently overpriced Ryan Donato to the point where nobody came up and
We
asked
we
about him,
wanted a first rounder. We
which
demanded a
it was a
first
seller.
rounder.
The thing about it, going back to what you were saying about the deadline, it was a seller's market, truth be told. Like, the prices that some of these guys were going for, Rantanen, Brock Nelson, Ryan Donato, I think a lot of GMs, including the Devils, were like, especially for the Devils, with having so many of your main guys out, Tom Fitzgerald definitely pivoted. He still wanted to add, which he did, adding Cody Glass, Daniel Sprong, Brian Dumoulin, all those guys, but he wasn't going to go big game hunting when his team wasn't at full strength. So I
Mhm.
think he still wanted to give his team help to try to compete the rest of the year, get into the playoffs and see what happens. But he didn't want to mortgage so much of the future when your present and your future is currently on IR. So I think that's kind of the way he looked at it. I think he tried. He apparently said that they were second on a big market player. That could have been Rantanen, that could have been someone else. We'll never know what he was really referring that to. But when you look at the offseason, I mean, to me, the most realistic in terms of the big free agents is probably Nikolai Ehlers, because of the fact that he's going to require less money than Mitch Marner. Now, could the Devils go after Mitch Marner? Sure. The relationship between Sheldon Keefe and Marner was great. So that could be a bargaining chip to just kind of convince him if he hits the market, which he may not. I don't know. Toronto usually pulls these long-term contracts out of left field when we think that it's not possible that they're going to keep this entire core together at all getting more than 10 million per year.
Yeah.
Um,
Sometimes I just watch them and I'm like, what math are you doing behind the scenes to just magically make that? How does this make sense?
they have the most analytical nerds, I think, in the NHL in terms of the cap, like trying to figure out the cap numbers. But I've loved Nikolai Ehlers for a lot of years. I think he's one of the most underrated forwards in the league, and he's roughly supposed to make $8 to $9 million per year. I think that's actually a steal considering the type of player he's. If he would fit perfectly as the speedy scoring winger alongside Jack Hughes. Um, the one shot in the dark, like unrealistic unless things change, would be David Pastrnak, because I don't know where the Bruins stand at this point. I don't
No
think any
one
of us
does.
do. It's kind of like, are they going to continue to try to do what they've been doing, or are they going to finally decide, you know what? I think we do have to actually rebuild, because they have the worst farm system in the league. Like, they have nothing. So I think that if Pastrnak were to become available, I think the Devils would absolutely 1000% need to be at the forefront of that, because of the ability that he could bring as another superstar player. And we know, and everybody knows what he brings to the table every night. So, and I would give up a lot to bring him in for the right now, because he would be locked in long term. Um,
Heck, I'd give up a lot for David Pastrnak.
I think
Like, sure.
I think every team in the league would give up a lot for David. But again, I'm not speaking like I have any insider information out of Boston that this is going to happen. I am saying that if you're David Pastrnak, you have to be curious to know, where is this organization going moving forward. You traded away your captain literally for nothing. Like, you pissed him off to the point where you traded him for like a conditional pick. There isn't much talent in Boston right now. So what is the direction? I don't know. So I would say to people, keep an eye on Boston. Let's see where things go when we get to June and July of this year, um, especially if they don't make the playoffs, which I don't think they will at this point. I think they're very much done. But those are just some names. I think Mitch Marner is a possibility because of the fact of his ability as a player and his relationship with Sheldon Keefe. Um, but I mean, Sheldon Keefe really has become the topic of news over the last
I
12 hours
I
here.
was gonna say, do you want to talk about your guys' game last night and kind of
Yeah.
Sheldon
Well,
Keefe
I already did
talking to
today,
the
but I could do
media?
it again. Yeah, I could definitely do it again. Simply put, as of late, the Devils have gotten into a funk where they either get into a lead or they just get in a funk where they're not super aggressive and the other team hits them with several goals. I mean, the game against the Flames on Thursday, you're up 3-1 and you end up losing 5-3 in regulation. I mean, that was a collapse among collapses in the third period. And then last night, you go down 3-1, you come out pretty strong in the third, but you just can't get that third goal and you end up losing and you're dropping points that you shouldn't be dropping, because if the Devils had gotten those 4 points like they should have, I think the feeling around the fan base would be a lot different right now than what it is in this moment. But the highlight or the low light, depending on what you want to look at, is after the game, Jonathan Kovacevic was asked about what does this Devils team need to do to get to right the ship, and he said along the lines of, we need to have a playoff mentality. Now, truth be told, for Kovacevic, he hasn't played in the playoffs in his entire career. Granted, he hasn't played that many years in the league. Let me be fair to him. Um, so I don't. So like, it's interesting for him to say that, but I get what he was trying to say, because I think that there is somewhat of a belief that some of the guys are thinking that, oh, we have an easy schedule, the other teams behind us are falling over themselves, we're fine. When in reality, they're not. They're not fine. They're not even close to that. But Sheldon Keefe from NJ.com, the reporter asked him, oh, Kovacevic said we need to have a playoff mindset, the rest of the way. Before the reporter could finish the question, Sheldon Keefe interrupted him and said, Kovacevic needs to be better. That would help. It went dead silent for about 5 seconds, and then Sheldon walked off. And I spoke to Steve Dangle and asked him straight up, have you ever seen Sheldon Keefe do this? He said, no. He would have never been able to do that because he would have been, you know,
He would have
he
been run out of town
would
if
have
he
been
said
run
that
out of
about
town
like
because of
anybody on
Toronto.
Toronto.
It's different. It's different in New Jersey. There are reporters, but it's not that. It's the reason why it became such a blow up was because nobody had ever seen Sheldon do that. But because it's Sheldon Keefe, it's like, oh, this is news. And so my response to it was, I don't I'm not upset that Sheldon did that. As a matter of fact, I'm actually happy that he called out even just one of his players. I know people looked at it like he threw him under the bus. I don't look at it that way per se. I think Sheldon knows deep down he needs this entire team to play better. That would help. Um, because right now they're not playing anywhere near the level that they can play, even if they are depleted. Um, and so this is going to go one of two ways moving forward. Either Sheldon's going to lose the locker room, which is very possible, or this team's going to wake up and start playing better and start getting the results that they need. I don't know. Sheldon Keefe has never missed the playoffs in his entire career as an NHL head coach, and I don't think he has any motivation or has any idea of not missing the playoffs this year. I think he wants to get in the dance. I don't think there's any question that this has been the hardest season of his career
Right.
from the standpoint of adversity and everything, because he never had to deal with injury and season-ending injuries to his top players. Austin Matthews was never out for the year. Mitch Marner was never out for the year. Morgan Riley was never out for the year. So it's a new challenge for him. But I've always really liked Sheldon Keefe from the time he got here. I think he's incredibly bright. I think he knows what he's doing. I just think that he's having difficulty at times getting this team to fully buy into what he's doing because I think emotionally this team is still a bit down on losing some of the key guys. And that's where I've said that this is more on the general manager than it is on Sheldon Keefe because the team is not constructed to, if one of your best players is out, can the rest of the team step up? Only a couple of guys, in my opinion, have really stepped up. Timo Meyer, Heischer, certainly Jesper Bratt, and Cody Glass, who's only been here for 6 games. Like if Cody Glass is one of your most productive forwards with a bunch of guys who have been here since October, that
You've
is
got a problem.
exactly. It's a major problem. So I love that we have a coach that wants to hold these guys accountable. Because I think for too long with this group, they have been kind of babied. They haven't been really challenged by a coach to perform better. And we have enough veterans in the locker room that have been there and done that also need to speak up and get this group going. So I don't know. I couldn't tell you what Devils team you're going to see in a couple of days. I could not tell you what you might see. So it'll have to be once the game starts. Maybe you'll get a good idea, but I couldn't even tell you then.
Who even knows then? Because I feel like when we play good teams, they'll coast for the first 40 minutes and then turn on for the 20. And I'm like, oh, remember that when we were up 2-0 in the first period? That was so nice. Speaking of your guys with season-ending injuries.
Yeah.
I feel like Jack Hughes has gotten unnecessary criticism since like the Four Nations tournament with his performance in the Four Nations tournament.
Yep.
Him being injured and kind of the drama that's around his injury. What are your thoughts with Jack this year?
Well, first of all, like I know what you were talking about when getting criticism for Four Nations. You're talking specifically about Frank Saravalli's comments, which I've never really been a fan of Frank Saravalli and his evaluation of players. Because if you're going to evaluate a player's career based solely off of a 4-game tournament, then I don't believe you're watching the sport. Because I have said several times, do you know that Austin Matthews and Jack Hughes had the same amount of points in production in the Four Nations? Yet no one wants to talk about, oh, Austin Matthews underperformed in the Four Nations. I think Jack Hughes is an easy target because of the fact that he plays for the Devils and he is a young player who has a different personality than what the purists of the game are used to seeing. I mean, there's that viral clip, Steve Valiquette saying that he plays Instagram hockey. Whatever that means, so I still don't know what he was necessarily referring to. But the Jack Hughes injuries are a concern because it's essentially been every year other than one where he gets an injury that he misses several weeks, a month, and in this case, the rest of the season. And I think the issue is that he hasn't made the decision to put on any sort of muscle. I think that I'm not saying he has to get like over, 225 and be an absolute unit like Rob Brindamore is. I'm talking about like he needs to build his body up to withstand those type of plays because he is a marked man whenever he's on the ice.
Yeah.
These guys, a lot of teams look at the Devils and say, if we stop or we knock out Jack Hughes, we beat this team easily. And unfortunately, the Devils have made it easier for teams to believe that by the way they've performed since he's been out. And that's what it is. So I'm more just frustrated. I feel bad for Jack because it's like Last year was his shoulder. This year it's his shoulder. 1 year was his wrist, which ironically was in that Blackhawks game that Connor Bedard got hurt in the same game. Both of them, the same game, got hurt, which was shocking to me. But it's a concern. There's no question about it. You wonder to yourself, how many injuries is this kid going to have to deal with before he can fully break through? Because this kid is capable. I call him a kid because he still is. This kid is capable of hitting 100 points. He almost did 2 years ago. He got 99. He's a superstar player. He just has to prepare himself physically to be able to withstand and stay in these games. And I'm sure that that's going to be a focus of his, because you got to think at this point in his career, buddy, you've made the playoffs once and everybody still thinks that you're a bust, even though you've proven numerous times that that's not the case. So I'm hopeful that next season is a huge redemption year for him, because he's got to come in pissed off and motivated to dominate. And I think that's what I hope for.
Do you think that, because I'm a Jack Hughes lover, so I definitely am with you there. But do you feel like part of the hatred is like, yes, the injuries, but also just the market that he's in? Everyone's going to kind of have an edge against New Jersey versus like New York or
Yeah.
Toronto or like larger, more conventional hockey markets. They're going to kind of hate on him just because he plays for the Devils.
I think that's a very valid point, because I've said this before, that the Devils have always been, I don't want to say in the shadow, but to an extent they have been in the shadow of the New York Rangers. I mean, it's our biggest rival. They play right across the Hudson River, and we play right in the backyard of the New York metropolitan area, which is the biggest media market in the world. And you go back to 2019, the top two teams in the draft were the Devils and the Rangers. And to this day, Capo Caco, which he's doing fantastic in Seattle, good for the kid, because I still think he's a pretty talented forward, if in my opinion.
He
You
just
know,
needed to get out of
he just
Madison
needed
Square
to get
Garden.
out of the Rangers system, and now he's fine, and now he's flourishing. He's doing exactly what Ranger fans had always hoped that he could do. But Jack Hughes, being this talented, it has irritated a lot of Ranger fans. And also his personality irritates a lot of Ranger fans, because he's cocky, because he's brash, he's confident, he believes in his abilities. But playing in this area, he's going to get criticized because, oh, he's on the Devils. And who cares about the Devils? They're a small market team. We get called small market all the time. We play in Newark. And everybody makes fun of Newark, New Jersey, because, oh, it's the most dangerous place in the NHL to go to a game, which I, to this day, if people actually like went to a game, they would see it's really not as bad as people describe it to be. If that was the case, why are the Devils the sixth most valuable franchise in the NHL right now? Why do they constantly get huge crowds to go to games at this point? Like it, I've often said that if Jack Hughes was a Ranger, he would be in a bigger spotlight than he is now, because he would be in an original six market. He would be a superstar player, this, that, and the other thing. So it's the fact that he's a Devil. He plays in New Jersey, which everybody considers the armpit of America. It's a lot of different things that go into it, which makes showing up the Ranger fans, the Islander fans, and the NHL in general that much more meaningful, because you then are forced to deal with us. And people say the Devils have one of the worst fan bases. I take that as a compliment, because you're acknowledging the fact that we exist. You're acknowledging the fact that we're a good team that other fan bases have to interact with. And I don't know if there's a similarity to this in the Central Division, but it's that kind of, that it's like that little brother type of mentality all the time, of like, we have to always prove that we can be at the same level as the big boys in the NHL. We're one of the new kids on the block, but a lot of the older teams don't want us around at all. So that's just how it is.
I feel like that's like obviously not this year because Connor Hellebuck is an absolute wonder, but I think it's Winnipeg for the Central, at least for like the longest time.
Yeah,
People would just generally forget that Winnipeg not only had a team, but also that they were in the Central Division. And that just might be a proximity thing, but it was
yeah,
just no one really cared. It was like
right.
it was like Chicago versus Detroit or Chicago
Yeah,
versus Minnesota. Like I think all and maybe that they are a newer team and maybe I just care because after 2010 we sent all of our players to the Winnipeg Jets. Um, but maybe because they don't have as much of like a heated rivalry as some other teams in the division, but it's
sure.
definitely Winnipeg. Where now this year we're like, oh shit, we have to play Winnipeg.
And that's what Devils fans want this team to get to at some point, is to be teams to look at us and be like, "Oh crap, we have to play New Jersey." And that's not fun. Like we don't want to be a fun team to play against on a night-to-night basis. Um so that's the way that we look at it, and it's not going to happen this year, but we're hopeful that it can happen in the very near future because the window has just opened for this team. We have everybody locked in. We just have to fit our core with the right pieces around them,
Mhm.
and then we can rock and roll. So that's kind of what it is. So like I'm excited for the rest of the year. I'm still very, very hopeful that this team can not only get in the playoffs but make noise. I would like them to compete. If it means we go out in 7 games to Carolina in the first round, you know what? That's better than anybody thought that we were going to do the second that Jack Hughes got hurt. Everybody wrote us off already. Everybody expects us to miss the playoffs. I think us getting in the playoffs while missing all of those guys, I consider that the biggest victory of the season. And that's the way I'm handling it. And then you go into the offseason, I think the sky's the
Regroup.
limit. So,
Yeah. You
yeah,
compete as much as you can and then you just regroup and kind of
exactly.
okay, what worked, what didn't work. And I certainly
Exactly.
don't think you guys are in the position of like burning everything to the ground. You
No,
have
no, no,
pieces.
no.
You're just very unlucky.
We're different than I like using the Leafs as an example because it's similar in that our core has just been unlucky. The Leafs have always been healthy for the most part. When they go into the playoffs, they just don't get it done. You can't really evaluate that, at least yet, with this Devils team because number one, they haven't been in the playoffs that many times, once in the last 10 years, or at least 5 years. And there's always somebody important that's not playing. So that's why 2 years ago was such a crazy year, because everybody was healthy all year. We
Mhm.
had the whole team ready to go every game. So that's what makes even going into the playoffs like it's great, but it also sucked because we don't have Jack, we don't have Dougie, we don't have Siegenthaler. This is the team that we have, and this is the team that we have to rock with until next season. So I still believe in this team, and I'm going to keep believing in this team until proven otherwise. And I
Yeah.
think we're in the right direction. We just need to have some more good luck go our side moving forward, which I think you make your own luck, I believe. Um, unless you're Chicago in the Bedard draft. Sorry, I had to drop that in.
Oh no, I
I had
fully
to
we
drop that in
we
there,
rigged that draft for Connor.
of course.
I'm
Um,
I, I'm
I mean, if
very
you
aware
get
of
if you
that, but
get
I'm
if you
doing
get the
it.
first overall pick this year, then you might as well. I'm just accepting at that point.
I
I'm like,
need number 3. We can't be drafting another defenseman.
that's a fair
We have
point,
too
but
many.
I think for us, it's just regroup. How can we get better next year? What do we need to do? And let's go out and do it. And now I think we have a coach that can do it. I really do. I really, really believe that the Devils have the right guy in place. I think it's just easy for this fan base to give up because of how the last decade is gone for this franchise, of being irrelevant, missing the playoffs, constantly fighting for first overall picks. I mean, God, it's like I now know what it felt like to be an Oilers fan for a good long time. Honestly, I really actually get it now. I get it completely. Um, so we just want to be relevant. I think that's really what we want at the end. We want to have a good team. It's the
That's
only team in the state that bears the state's name. And we take a lot of pride in that. And we want this team to be good. We have an owner that wants to win. And there's no excuse for this team not to go out and be ballsy and do big things to help this team win. And I think they will.
Heck yeah. Perfect. Well, Neil, thanks so much for coming on, talking about the Devils, giving us the Devils tea. That is all, you guys, and we will talk at you guys next week.
And we are back with another episode of Monday Previews. Hockey Princess will be interviewing the people from Jersey. I'm sure they have a lot to say about their team right now. So then you'll get the next two games from me. As you can tell, I'm getting ready for the Flyers game today. It's Sunday. This will come out on Monday. So Wednesday we play the New Jersey Devils. And then we play Friday and Sunday. Friday we will play the Vegas Golden Knights, which we've played a decent amount this year. Most of you guys should know basically what's going on with that team. They are still missing Wild Bill. They did pick up Brandon Saad, who's been skating up and down their lineup. Their top group is Jack Eichel, Mark Stone, and Thomas Hertl, who have been tearing it up lately. Eichel has 22 goals, 64 assists. Hertl, 18 goals and 43 assists. Or no, that's Mark Stone. And then Hertl has 30 goals. The Vegas Golden Knights have won 2 in a row. They are 6-2-2 in their last 10. They sit atop the Pacific Division. They are only 3 points ahead of Edmonton with a game in hand. So it's still pretty important. You don't want to be, you probably don't want to have Edmonton take you over. Right now, the wild card teams are Minnesota and St. Louis. You would not mind playing either one of them. There is a back-to-back. We play Vegas on Friday night. Saturday, they do play Nashville. I'm curious to see who gets the backup goaltender, considering that'll be two really bad teams. I have to think that the Hawks have gotten a backup goaltender at least 30% of the time. So, besides that, Vegas is the same old team. They're going to come at you with speed. They have a lot of thumpers on the back end, good goaltending, so it'll be a very difficult game for the Blackhawks. Then we can move on to the next team that they will be playing Sunday. I believe Sunday is either a 2 or 3 o'clock game Sunday. And that is the Utah Hockey Club, which all of a sudden we have played a lot. Utah is 5-3-2 in their last 10. They have won their last 2. It does not look like they are under any back-to-backs. Because then there would have been the chance of getting a Jackson Stauber maybe up against the Hawks, which would just be entertaining. For those of you who might not remember, Jackson was with the Hawks for a little while. About 2-3 years ago, he played a decent amount of games, at least like 10, up with the big club when everybody was getting injured. Let's see here. Utah is currently 5th in the wild card race with 75 points. St. Louis is tops with 79. They have a game in hand in St. Louis, so they still are in the running. A lot of young talent. You've got Caruso, you've got Logan Cooley, you've got Doan, you've got Gunther, Kelly, and of course you have Nick Schmaltz. They are still lacking a little bit in the goaltending area and on defense. Again, that'll be a team that's fighting for points, so I expect them to also come out pretty strong and not give the Blackhawks a lot. That is no major injuries for them. As I said, both teams are playing well right now. It's every game counts for these two teams. So that's about all I have, and I'll talk to you next week.